Well, what's true masculinity? It's whatever you want it to be, as long as it's uplifting and it's positive and you feel at peace and you're bringing, and in your interactions with others, you're leaving it better than you came into it. That's real masculinity. It's whatever you want it to be.
You're listening to the Mindful Mama podcast, episode number 228. Today we're talking about becoming the father you want to be with M.J Singletary-Villalobos. Welcome to the Mindful Mama podcast. Here it's about becoming a less irritable, more joyful parent. At Mindful Mama, we know that you cannot give what you do not have, and when you have calm and peace within, then you can give it to your children. I'm your host, Hunter Clark-Field's Mindful Mama mentor. I help smart, thoughtful parents stay calm so they can have strong, connected relationships with their children. I've been practicing mindfulness for over 20 years. I'm the creator of the Mindful Parenting membership and course, and I'm the author of Raising Good Humans, a mindful guide to breaking the cycle of reactive parenting and raising kind, confident kids. Welcome back, my friend. I am so glad you are here. This is an episode for the daddies out there, for fathers and for mamas too, but it's also for fathers. So I hope that you are dad listening here to my words now too. In just a moment, I'm going to be sitting down with M.J Singletary-Villalobos. In just a moment, I'm going to be sitting down with M.J Singletary, who is a higher education professional, socioeconomics educator, and a forthcoming published author. And he's the creator of Who's That Dad?, an Instagram journey of Afro-Latinx family navigating new spaces while holding on to their heritage. And the mission of the page is to share uplifting stories of self-reflection, peace, and joy. We are going to be talking about modern fatherhood. You know, for dads who are rising up and calling BS against the old harmful paradigms of masculinity, what does the new picture look like? And so I talked to MJ about this and a lot more. I want you to listen for some important takeaways, how fatherhood was too important a job to just take the learn as you go advice, and how your ideas about masculinity are not your ideas, and that it's okay to take a break and to rest. Before we dive into this episode, I want to let you know that I will soon be opening up the Mindful Parenting Teacher Training. Go to mindfulmamamentor.com for more information about that. If you are interested in taking mindful parenting and teaching it as an in-person class in your community and sharing these ideas about how to lower your stress response and how to communicate skillfully with kids and change generational patterns to your community, go to mindfulmamamentor.com to learn more about it, or email me at hunter@mindfulmamamentor.com. And now join me at the table as I talk to MJ. MJ, thanks so much for coming on the Mindful Mama podcast.
No, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate you.
I'm excited to talk to you, and you have a really great perspective. And I just I think this says it so well. So, you know, as I introduced the Who's That Dad Instagram page, and you just recently reintroduced yourself, and you said, is it okay if I read your words back to you?
That's perfectly fine. No problem.
And you said,
hopefully there's no typos.
I won't read the typos.
Perfect.
My journey to fatherhood didn't begin as rosy as these pictures. My life became a horrible storm when I received the news I was going to be a dad. I felt like I was not the man I wanted to be yet. More importantly, I desired peace, rest, and direction. I wanted to break my shackles of hurt and pain to give him a life of freedom he so deserved. To me, fatherhood, especially Black fatherhood, is too important to learn as I go. I mean, there's so much in that. So I would love it if you could tell us a little bit more about that. I mean, because as I told you, like, I really relate to becoming a parent and your life becoming a storm, because everything changes, and for me at least, bringing up all these things from the past and generational patterns and all of this stuff. So I don't know if that was the same for you, but what were you talking about in there when you said, you know, your life became a horrible storm?
Yeah, Truthfully, I didn't have. I mean, my mother gave the best that she could. She did the best that she can to try to raise me, given the circumstances. A lot of those circumstances were in and out of domestic violence shelters. So what happened was she really pushed that education was like my ticket out, the ticket to more, and just continue to be resilient and continue to push forward. But within all that, there were still things that I think we are working on as a family and working on ourselves. And then oftentimes when you're in survival mode, you don't really have time to deal with how to be a better person, how to be more mindful, you're just trying to get through day by day, especially when you have children. So the reason when I finally got to college, I felt like I was starting to gain some control of my life. Like I finally was being able to call the shots that past circumstances weren't gonna come back into my life. And then what happened was my senior year of college, so about 6 years ago, that's when my current partner, my wife at the time, she was my girlfriend, announced that she was pregnant. And I was very destroyed because I knew, I know personally firsthand, what happens, when you have children, you're not ready, and you're not prepared, and the struggles of it. And at the same time, I didn't feel like I was, like I said in the post, I didn't feel like I was the person I wanted to be yet. Like there's a difference between wishing to be the man that you are and wishing to wish that you were the man that you were. And I was kind of the latter. I wasn't really putting in it. I mean, I was young and just trying to find myself and find my direction. And that's basically why that is kind of how the storm began for me as a person, as a parent.
Yeah. So I can totally relate to that. You finally get your own stuff together, right? Like
Exactly.
you're like, all right, I'm good. Like I figured out how to get along in the world. I'm like doing okay. All this stuff happened, and then the sort of turmoil that throws you into. So you obviously things progress. The kiddo came along. And what I'm just curious about, like, so you grew up like you were in and out of domestic violence shelters. That's an incredibly difficult childhood. That's definitely survival mode. I'm curious about, like, what was that the father that you wanted to be, and did you have any like role models or anything for that?
Yeah. So I think like I said, my mother was probably the one who held me down. She was like my role model um, for most of my life. Um, I think I've learned to be resilient, and I learned to fight even to a fault, for my life and for the things that I want, just from her. And she's extremely witty and so controlled and confident. I always wanted to be her. I never. I mean, I don't remember growing up. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't remember growing up like wishing for a father figure because I mean, in fact, like I guess she was somewhat superhuman to me. So I mean, looking back, it wasn't fair to her to think of her that way, but that's kind of how she was.
Mm-hmm.
But then I didn't really have any real male role models until probably high school. I had it was my track and field coach and my basketball coach. They kind of took me under their wings and like really just showed me just real masculinity and a lot of even though I didn't notice it at the time, I was very passionate and I was very like just like push forward. I have to get through. I have to get through. A lot of the things that they taught me, it's funny when trying to find myself, you come into a full circle and you learn. You already had the tools; they're already within you. So
it's like that movie kind of thing. It was within you all the time.
No, I think exactly. No, it's so true. And I think like the type of person you want to be, like at the end of the day, it really is already in you. You just have to figure out the tools to have it come about. For some people, there's a lot of things that might be blocking that on being just a good person or being mindful or being present or peaceful. Maybe it's finances. Maybe that that's really your hurdle, Brock. Maybe it's people in your life. Maybe it's your, not happiness in your career. Or so many other situations. But I totally, all jokes aside, I totally believe it's just like the movie. Like the things that you're looking for, the things that you want to be, like you already are that person. You just have to tap into it.
I agree completely. I agree that within each of us there is this center core of like peacefulness and presence, and just really fully one with everything, kind of, that's like at the center of all of us. It's all the
Exactly.
layers of strategies we put on top, like survival strategies that are on top that cover that up, that interior gold.
Oh, so true. Totally.
Yeah. So what was that, your track and field coach, they showed you what you said real masculinity was like? What was it that you, as you came into this place, like you're in this place of fatherhood, it's impending, did you do some soul searching about what was the father you wanted to be, what kind of father you wanted to be, and what were some of the characteristics of that?
Definitely a lot of soul searching. Just like in the post that you shared,
Mm-hmm.
One of the sentences I discussed that like fatherhood was too important to me to just leave it up to chance. And I know a lot of I know it's a very personal topic, so I'm not trying to like influence anyone on how to think. It's just a lot of, in the beginning when I first had the news and I was reaching out for help, reaching out for information, a lot of people were just like, "Oh, you'll just learn on the go. You'll learn on the go." And I was scared of that notion because I'm like, well, I research my house, I research my cars, I research I research my fitness plans. Like, you know what I mean? Like these these things are, I mean, they're meaningful, but compared to a child, they mean nothing. And we go through all the avenues to make sure we're making the right choice. And then as soon as it's time to bring a human being into life, we're like, oh, well, I'll just go with how it goes. And I was like, that scared me because I was like, well, um, oftentimes you just, if you don't actively try to be, to tap into that kind of person and be a better person, you're just going to repeat what your parents did, and your parents are repeating what their parents did, and it goes so on and so on and so on. And I was like, I don't want to make that mistake and repeat a lot of those past mistakes that my family did, well-meaning things that just, that unfortunately were harmful.
Mm-hmm.
So you're totally right. I did go to soul searching. I mean, a lot of my family members thought I went crazy. Like I was, I grew up in a very conservative Christian household. So I was like definitely, flirting with different religions and like staying up late at night, reading different texts, just trying to figure out, just trying to find some type of peace and some type of purpose. And I think what really hit it for me was, but I had hard times trying to wrap around some of the concepts, of these beings, these superior beings, and some of their beliefs. And I think what finally did it for me was, I came across, a Buddhist text. I'm probably gonna butcher his name, but it's like Thich Nhat Hanh.
Thich Nhat Hanh.
Yeah.
Thich Nhat Hanh. He's one of the first teachers I ever read, and I've been on retreat with him in person. Yeah.
Get out of here. Really?
Yeah. His
Oh, that's
last retreat in the
awesome.
United States. It was amazing. I took my daughter
That's
when she was
crazy.
6, actually, when she was your son's age.
Oh my God, that's awesome. But yeah, so it was between him and like James Baldwin. They're like kind of like those two like kind of helped me just, find peace and reconstruct who I was and the person I kind of be, because it got pretty bad. Like the first few months I was doing everything I can to be present, but I was like my parents, normally turn to alcohol to help cope with their problems, which, I'm not here to judge anyone. Like I get it. Like sometimes times is rough. Like you got to do what you're going to do. But I did, and I turned to those same methods to try to help me out. And, it just wasn't helping. I mean, it wasn't, and much as it tasted really good, but mentally it just wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't getting me to where I wanted to get to as a father, and like, each day kept inching closer and closer and closer to who he wanted to be, to who he was, coming to the world. So, just finally, after searching through all these different texts and, being a very gracious patron to my library, I came across these two books, and that kind of like started it all for me. Like everything picked up from there.
Ah, that's amazing. I wonder what Thich Nhat Hanh book it was. Do you remember?
So it was Peace is Every Step.
Peace is Every Step. That's a great book.
Yeah, and then like I bought one of those like the mini pocket ones, like the mini Penguin Pocket series. It's like a pocket of like all what they believe were like his best writings.
Yeah.
So that kind of like I just studying that, and then like that led me to yoga, and then those two principles challenged who I like a lot of the hypocrisies in my heart. Like for example, I felt like I'm trying to be the best person for my sons. Like, well, what does that mean for other sons, for other daughters? And I started that who I am as a person today is really influenced by how I feel about my children. So, like for example, I became a pescatarian. I knew everybody knows about climate change and those. And yes, it's very important, but it wasn't enough to like change my habits, my living habits. But like when I had my kids, and I started to question like, oh my God, look what it's doing to kids who look like my kids. I just felt like I was a hypocrite to continue doing certain things and believing in certain paths, even if it doesn't like benefit, affect me right now and then. And just but I also had to like sometimes put a taper at it, because then if you push it too far, then you're gonna go crazy. So, but that's kind of how it began for me.
Baby steps. But it sounds like, becoming a father for you, it sounds like in a big way, it was like a spiritual crisis, right? Like it was like a moment of reckoning. Who am I? Who do I want to show up as in the world? And you really had a great, understanding right away that who you are matters so much more than what you say and, et cetera. Like that your modeling of how to be, of the person, of modeling to be a good person in this world for your son is the most important thing that matters.
Oh, definitely. You put it so eloquently and simply. That's really the situation I was in. It was like, who am I? And then at the end of the day, if you don't know who you are, then make who you want to be. And I think that's kind of how I started.
Yeah. Like who you are in so many ways is like what you do every day, what you do every day is what makes up your life. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's part of something that you really exemplify in your Instagram feed, which is kind of funny to say that, I think, for me, because I don't think of like an Instagram feed as like as a as a deeper thing in some ways than that, like that, but it is for you.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yep. I always say to my wife that I want my Instagram not to not to I wanted it to be an extension of who I am, and I want it to be real, but I don't want it to like tell me what to do. You know how some people like everything they do or whatnot is like based off of an Instagram post.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I'm gonna go here, or I'm gonna do this because I can get a good picture, or I can post this, or I can say that. And I was like, no, I just want to live my life, and I want to keep continuing to push myself and find out who I really am. And I want Instagram just to showcase that. So you'll probably notice that some of my Instagram posts are hopeful and mindful, but some of them are questioning. And the same thing that I try to give to a lot of people who follow me. I'm giving to myself like that same level of accountability, but at the same time, that same peacefulness to just meet you where you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I don't know, from what I've seen, I think you're an encourager, you know, you're saying, you're using this feed to be uh, someone who encourages others to just really be present and to live fully.
Oh, totally. I mean, that's what my goal is, hopefully. At the end of the day, I just want that for people, that, just to be who you want to be, and to find it, and find some type of peace. And that's why I was saying, in the recent post, was like, I want something. I mean, I know it can't be tangible, but I want you to take away something that you can take and bring back to your family, bring back to your loved ones. Some of my posts are like, hey, they're based off how I'm feeling. So sometimes I might share that. So maybe if I'm having a hard night, I might put in a post, I know you're having a hard night. And it's like, there's probably nobody I might be following having a hard night. But I'm hoping that if someone's having a hard night, the same way I'm trying to encourage myself to push through, I want to encourage you to push through too, be based off of these things.
Yeah, and I can't help but personally be attracted to your Instagram posts because you live in Connecticut and I grew up in Rhode Island, and you have these great images of like museums and going hiking, and of my, as I told you, my favorite room in the world in Rhode Island School of Design Museum in Providence. There's this, probably looted from some poor temple way back when, but this like 20-foot Buddha, that's my favorite room in the world. it's
No,
it's
yeah.
so attractive.
So I love New England. I grew up most of my life in New England. Probably like my late middle school, high school years, I lived in Ohio. And then after that, I moved back. I intentionally said I do not like the Midwest. Thanks to track and field, I had an opportunity to travel a lot of places in the country. But my heart has always been set in New England. So when I had the opportunity to run back, I ran into its arms open wide, like, please take me back. But I'm with you. I love New England. I just love, especially in like Connecticut or Rhode Island, like it's such a small space, but you can get everything. Like you can be in the city, you can be in the beaches, you can be in literally the Appalachian Mountains within all like hour or 2 hour span.
Yeah, yeah. And not to like geek out and go on too much of a tangent on New England, but if you're a pescatarian, then you've probably got some great seafood loves, and I don't understand. I'm sorry, dear Mid-Atlantic, where I live right now, but why no one includes the belly in their fried clams anywhere but New England? What is this clam strip thing? I don't even understand. It's pointless.
It really is. It's just mainly breading. Like, okay, I'm paying you what, $15-$20 for, fried breading with pepper on it. It's just like, okay, thanks.
Give me the whole belly clams, and a big shout out to Quito's in Bristol, Rhode Island. But I mean, from my own experience, Rhode Island, Connecticut are pretty white places. Like there's a big white majority, and there's like, I grew up learning just barely some of the terrible history of my hometown. And that's not really taught very well. Do you feel as a Black man, like, welcome and I mean, obviously you feel comfortable, it's your home, but you know what I mean? Like it just seems like from what I've seen of, Connecticut and Rhode Island, it just is it's a fairly undiverse place, from what I've seen.
That is very true. Working at a institution, at a university, I see it all the time. Just from like a statistical level, I mean, I guess at the last census, like only 6% of the Connecticut population was Black people, and that's pretty the roundabout for most of New England. I mean, until recently, Vermont used to have an asterisk because they didn't have enough Black people to put on a report.
Wow.
I think also, yeah, and then to make things even more difficult was that I am a African American, but I am also a Latino. My family is from Puerto Rico, so it was very tough. It's very difficult because when they talk about, not just in Connecticut, but like all over the country, a lot of Latinos say on the census that they're not Latino, that they're white. So like the number, you were right. There isn't enough representation or enough I guess positive images going around in the state on how things are. So it is pretty white, and at times, even amongst white liberals, it can get pretty hard.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Y-
bet.
like James Baldwin discusses in, like, it's one of the movies, I'm Not Your Negro, but also in a few of his other writings that he believes, which I totally agree with, that sometimes white liberals can be more harmful to the cause or to Black people than the Southern conservative white people, just because that at least in the South, you know where you stand, and
Mm,
when you know where you stand, you know what you can do. You know there's more opportunities to move up because you know where you stand.
hmm.
Even if you look at statistical data today, when they always talk about Atlanta or the South, it's like, I mean, if you can deal with racism, at least you have the opportunity to move up the ladder. But in the North, they're welcoming, they're smiling, they're happy, but they it's systematically, things are set in place to prevent you from moving up. Like, even in my career field in higher ed, less than 3% of the entire higher education of full-time staff and faculty is people of color.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, uh, that's got to be, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I mean, I've definitely grew up like hearing racism from people in my town, It's
Hmm.
it's definitely there. It's there in the Northeast, unfortunately. And yeah, and I guess I've been learning, we're all kind of like, I think a lot of people all over the world are waking up to like the any kind of internalized racism we have, right? And like I'm kind of learning about that idea that like the defensiveness, like I'm not a racist is like is there's kind of like it's almost there's this, I'm sure there's that feeling in a lot of places, and it's almost better to like acknowledge that, we all have these racist ideas in us because this is the culture, this is the soup that we're in, just in the same
Hmm.
way like with parenting, we talk about parenting, that like that authoritarian, these expectations we have of kids and different things. This is just the soup that we're in, and it's not our fault that maybe these thoughts and ideas are in our heads, but we can be conscious of them, and just having that awareness can be is the most essential step in that level of change, to start change.
Agree. No, I totally understand. Like, I don't like mean to always quote James Baldwin. Like I say, he's one of the, but he says the same thing in the book called The Fire Next Door. Which, and that book helped me to forgive my parents, because he talks about how, like, oftentimes your parents or people, in one of the letters to his nephew, he's saying that they're well-meaning. They mean well in what things they say or do. But what happens is they may say things in person, but it's really what their actions are sharing. So oftentimes, they parents or people are trying to have positive conversations, or trying to have conversations about how to not to show racial or implicit or explicit biases, or how to be caring and loving in the world. But they don't even realize it, but subconsciously their actions say differently, and our
Mm.
children pick up on it. And then what happens is, if the next generation would do the same thing, and then the next generation would do the same thing, and then it just gets, and then we don't even, without realizing it, and really trying, until we actively try to say, I'm going to change myself to do better. That's how it just continues and continues.
Yeah, we're just repeating those generational patterns in this larger sense. So, a lot of us are like waking up to the fact that we need to be talking about racism with our kids. Like we need to be talking about it with our kids at from a very young level age. There's a book about anti-racism, a board book that's coming out by
Hmm.
and and so I'm wondering if is that, and I know for a lot of people that's difficult, um for white families, they often feel like I just going to raise my kids to be good people and we're not going to talk about this. But then we inadvertently teach our kids like that this is something that's so terrible that we can't even talk about it, you know? So I'm
Yeah.
wondering, is this something you're talking about with your sons? And they're young, right? Like how old are they? And is it something you're talking to them about with them? And maybe how are you having those conversations, if so?
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I first had my first conversation about it, I was like 4 or 5 years old. And my mother had it with me because we were being followed at a CVS in East Hartford, Connecticut. So, I know we had it at a very young age, and we've always had it. And as it evolved, like a sense of your freedom is taken from you because, like, you get constantly told, like, oh, you can't do these things, you can't do that. Stuff that especially living in Connecticut, your counterparts are doing, you see them doing, and they're living freely, and your parents are telling you not to do it because they know from experience, both from historical and personal, what it can mean. So, to be honest, probably since before my child was even trying to lift his head, my oldest was trying to lift his head. Me and my wife was actively trying to strategize. How do we ensure that he's going to grow up proud to be who he is, proud of both being Black and both being Latino, proud of his culture, his heritage, and more importantly, proud of his own identity, to be free in who he wants to be. So we've been started at an extremely early age, and so our take on how we're trying to do these conversations is that we haven't even started the slave talk. If you look at schools or parents or whatever the case may be, they always want to start with the slave talk, and the history of people of color goes well beyond than the American slave trade.
Mhm.
So we try to empower our two sons by teaching lessons about the many great things that their ancestors has done
Mhm.
to push to further fight for their equality, or a lot of the first things that they've done, about the creation of their language, of this, we're a bilingual family. Spanish was created by Black Moors. We try to get them to be very proud of who they are. We talk about when they ask questions of history, we tell them, from a truthful standpoint, like, this is what it looks like. We show them positive representations of Black heroes and Latinx heroes. Like, for example, my son wants to be an astronaut because Leland Melvin was a former NASA astronaut and engineer. And on top of that, he was the first person to be drafted into the NFL and visit space. You know what I
Wow.
mean? So yeah. So we haven't taken the slave approach yet. We're just trying to focus on just building self-confidence, proud of their hair texture, proud of their skin, proud of who they are. And that's
Telling
the motive.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, just telling all kinds of stories. I love that approach,
Hmm.
right? 'Cause, it's very similar to, like, a lot of us I've been really conscious with my girls of giving them really positive stories of females in history, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's makes sense. It's a similar kind of approach. My sister-in-law is is Senegalese, and she gave us this book, Africa is Not a Country. So we had all these stories of all the countries in Africa that my kids love this book. It's a good book. I would recommend it. But uh,
True.
anyway, just I love this idea of, like, let's be real at some point about what's happening, but let's also tell these positive stories too. Like that's an important I think that's an important step, like, for anyone maybe who's wondering how to start these conversations. Maybe we just start with these positive stories.
No, I agree. I totally, when you can look at research, it shows that, like, um, that parents, they're a positive force in trying to combat prejudice in their children. And some of the ways that they suggest to do that is that parents, have to take a more active role in supporting, like, different cross race and social economic friendships. Not just in their children, but also in themselves. And it also talks about, like, positive, reading books and watching TV shows and movies that show people of color, or people of different socioeconomic classes in a positive light. Those are definitely ways to like help start the conversations or help to deal with some of the prejudices or biases that, that we might have as people, and, to try to avoid them from passing down to our children. But no, I totally agree with that. I mean, but I can't be naive though. I definitely want to put a disclaimer. It's like, yeah, I'm doing all I can to push that my kids live freely. It definitely does take a lot of behind the scene work for me. So, I'm gracious for my job. I know a lot of parents of colors may not have this opportunity, but I'm gracious because of my job that I get to make sure that I'm actively involved in my child's school. I do this thing called a book test every time I visit a different teacher's classroom that my son is going to be in. And I say, okay, well, I try to look at how many books are children of color positively represented. And more often than not, there's more animals or shapes than there are children of color in books. And then, you bring, those are like the little lights that we can do as parents to like try to use our privileges and try to use our power that we have to make sure to advocate for fair treatment of racially marginalized groups or groups of people in different socioeconomics.
I know. I love that step. I think that's such an easy step. Like as the world has been kind of going crazy, and I've been thinking, there's so much happening, and I've been thinking about what's a step that I can take. I don't feel comfortable to go into a march right now with the coronavirus and the stuff going on, but I'm buying books and donating them to my library in my little community. That everybody can use. And then that could be a step that we could take, dear listener, like for your school. You could buy books for your kids' grade level, and maybe not even just for your home, but you could buy some books for your kids' classroom and just give them as a gift to your kids' teacher. Like, here's some books that can be more diverse. I love that.
Agree. Yeah, I definitely agree with that 100%. Because especially a lot of my personal experiences can definitely open eyes to what's going on. Sometimes my child is the only Black kid in his class. He's the only child of color in his classroom, and he's one of two in his grade of like 5 or 6 kindergarten classes. And when I did the same thing to donate books, I also sit in and read books. And you should, definitely a lot of the children at 4 or 5, 6-year-old, the things that they're saying, they mean so well. And the teachers oftentimes get embarrassed, but it's because, the conversations are not happening at the home.
Mm-hmm.
So I totally agree that, you may not want to march. Trust me, I'm not out marching either. But there's other ways to help fight these battles, and every single way is important. Every single way matters. So I totally agree with you that that's an awesome idea. If you're trying to start anywhere, just start there.
Yeah. I dear listener, I want you to, if you feel like doing that with me, just like tag me and let me know, or tag MJ and let him know, and we'll donate some books to some classrooms. I love that. So I want to shift a little to talk about talk a little bit about like the idea you talk about masculinity, and we've had some people talk about masculinity, and that's also in a crisis, right? In this world, there's like this like man box that like men are, there's this feeling that men can't show emotion, have any vulnerability, all these different things, and you write about that a little bit. Do you mind if I read something again?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, you wrote, like, together we're creating our own dogma on masculinity. Love for ourself, love for others, sensitivity, vulnerability, power, strength, nature, nurture, a trinity. And these are just obviously some sort of some thoughts thrown out there. And to me, they're thoughts that I really resonate, but I don't think that's, that I think that can be a challenging stance to many men and many fathers, and a hard place to get to from where a lot of people are. So maybe could you talk to me a little bit about that? How you have developed your ideas about what is like this real masculinity, right? Or what is this masculinity you want to show your boys?
Yeah, I'm glad for that question. A lot of times I tell my students, that like your ideas of masculinity, they're not your ideas. And it's like, go to the root. Like, who taught you these ideas? Like Malcolm X says, who taught you to hate yourself?
Mm.
Who taught you, um, you know, to, you got to be this way, you got to feel that way. It's like, okay, well, my parents did. Okay, where your parents learned that? And then where did they learn that? And then you get to the bottom of it, and it's like, okay, it's either some type of survival skill that goes way back to some type of oppression, or it's, um, I guess media consumption on how men are supposed to behave, especially in terms of like, in terms of in music. It's like, well, if you look at, like, people are always taking shots at hip hop music, but let's be honest, like the original hip hop music did not sound very similar to what it is today. It didn't sound like this until record labels of rich executives who got into this and said, no, this is the message you need to share. These are the things that you need to say. This is how we're making money. And though that those type of ideas, whether it be music or television or media, we didn't come up with these ideas. As a contract, a social contract, we didn't. People people who are calling the shots, people in control are. And I tell my students all the time is, you have to figure out how to break apart from those ideas, so then you can figure out for yourself, well, what kind of man do I want to be? What kind of ideas of masculinity do I want to hold on to? And at the root of it, when you speak to most people, most men, their ideas of masculinity or toxic masculinity, or the ideas that what man is supposed to be, it's harmful to them too.
Mm-hmm.
It hurts them, their feelings too. Like, oh, men have to be strong. Men have to be this. Well, a lot of men say, well, what if I can't get physically strong? Does it make me less of a man? Or, what, I don't have a deep voice, or I don't look this way, I'm not tall, or, I don't have these ideas that you guys having. So it affects them too. And when you cut down those ideas, you realize that ideas of what it is to be yourself, what it is to be masculine, are no different than what it is to be a feminist, or know what it is to be a great person. They're all the same thing. They all want the same thing. I want to be loved, and I want to give love. I want to live freely. I want to be at peace. I want to do the things that I want to do. I want to uplift others. I want to help others. Like when you get past those ideas, you cut through that grass, you realize that true masculinity is no different than just being a true human, a true person.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the way, you're saying that like these are survival skills, strategies that go back to oppression, and that's true. Like if you if you feel like you have to you're in a system that where you feel like you have to oppress others or be oppressed, you're not free. You know what I mean? Like if you have to
Exactly.
dominate your children, or if you have to teach your children to dominate others to be empowered, then they're not free to be who they are. They have to be this other thing. They have no real freedom or power if they have to force themselves into this thing. And to kind of step outside that is actually a real freedom.
Exactly. I totally agree. It does feel like a real sense of freedom. And because, at the end of the day, it really is a real sense of freedom. I think at the end of the day, well, what's true masculinity? It's whatever you want it to be, as long as it's uplifting and it's positive, and you feel at peace, and you're bringing, um, and in your interactions with others, you're bringing, a better sense. You're leaving it better than you came into it. That's real masculinity. It's whatever you want it to be. And I think that's what I'm trying to show my kids is like, definitely like being confident. Uh, that's you should teach your daughters that, just like you teach your sons that. Like, oh, you being assertive, or being a go-getter, or whatever ideas that you try to, that people, I'm sorry, not you, but people try to say, oh, this is what men should be like. That's what you should be teaching everyone, no matter what their their gender identity is. Like, those are ideas of what people should try to aspire to for the betterment of society. And that's the kind of messages I'm trying to, just gently share with my children, to become like, hey, whatever you want to be, that freedom is true masculinity.
Mm, I love that. Like my I feel really touched in my heart just like hearing that, because yeah, I think we hear so much about the problem and the way people suffer. And I think what MJ you're offering is like the opportunity, like what's the possibility? And that's really beautiful.
No, I agree, and that's what I'm hoping to offer. We touch other areas, like for example, that's what I'm just trying to just bring to others, and mainly by first bringing it to my family, first bringing it to myself too.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
just everything you expect from other people, you also have to give it yourself. Just not just because it's a better sense of your identity, a better sense of your family, and things of that nature.
So you are practicing to bring these things to yourself. How do you take care of yourself to nurture, to kind of like water these good seeds and to water this like beautiful intention that you have? How do you make it a daily practice, a weekly practice to water these good seeds?
For like me personally,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So I think for me personally, I try to just do things that I enjoy, and that I try to use those things that I enjoy sometimes by myself, sometimes with my family, sometimes with, especially with my children, even when I don't want to, like if I'm too tired, I try to do the best I can. And, if they want to be involved, they have them involved. And personally, their sense of energy is such a jolt. Sometimes at night it's time to go to bed, and I'm like, man, I wish they were up because they just bring such a liveliness to things. So it's like, well, how do I continue to water that those beliefs or the ones that you shared? It's just being honest with myself, being holding myself accountable, trying to do a temperature check at the end. I do that often at the end of the night. I have my app, my phone just set up to send me a reminder every day at 2 o'clock. To just kind of touch into myself and like, because sometimes I realize that if I'm having a really rough day, or if I start off having a really rough morning, if I don't get a hold of myself, or if I don't tap, like let it go, it just kind of like carries me through the whole day. You're just riding on this numbness. But then you realize, but if I tap in and say, oh no, wait a second, let me let this feeling go. I could reset the day. I could reset the moment. So I think for first and foremost for me, that's probably the most important thing I do daily. Is just constantly checking in. Okay, what can I do differently? How can I be a better person? How can I be a better father? How can I let this thing go or let that go? And being okay, and it's okay to take breaks. It's okay to take rest. I know, especially a lot late recently with social media. It's like you feel like if you take a rest with all the civil unrest going on, then you're not a good person. It's like no. If you need to take a break to be with your family, you need to take a break to catch your own emotions about everything that's going on. You need to do it so you can make sure you're performing at peak. That you're performing at your peak. And I just try to hold. Those are probably my most important ideas on how I make sure that I'm at my peak every day as a person and as a father.
Mm. MJ, thank you so much for coming on the Mindful Mama podcast. And I really appreciate your voice and your perspective. And yeah, I'm so happy I want the listener to go over and of course check out uh, MJ's Instagram feed. And is there anywhere else you want the listener to go or you want them to connect with you?
No, right now it's just my Instagram feed. I'm like I said, I'm working on things slowly because I'm not trying to expand drastically to like, oh, make money or do this, do that. I'm just trying to figure out how can I touch people and influence people, the best to my ability. So
All right. So go to MJ's Instagram feed if you listened and you want to check in and tell him what you think. I really appreciate what you're doing, the work that you're doing, and the presence that you are. Thank you so much, MJ.
no, totally. I mean, I get the circumstances of how we met, but I'm so blessed to have come across you, come across your page. I'm glad that you're in my life, and I hope we continue to just to grow off each other. So once again, just thank you for giving me the opportunity to be on the show.
Thank you so much for listening. I love what MJ has to say about the possibilities of modern fatherhood. It's so exciting to think about these new generations of dads doing things a different way, and that you don't have to be in that man box. And I loved talking to him about it. If you have enjoyed this episode, please do share it, like and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Take a screenshot of it and text it to your mom or your dad or your friends, and share this resource. It's the best way that the Mindful Mama podcast gets out there. And also, if you're interested in learning about the mindful parenting teacher training, go to mindfulmamamentor.com. And for all the daddies out there, I'm wishing you a beautiful Father's Day. Hope you have some joy and peace and reflection and all the wonderful things in the world that you like. So thank you so much for listening. Feel really honored that, if you're listening to my voice right now, you're here all the way to the very end, and I feel honored that you're sharing your precious commodity of your time with me, and I don't take that honor lightly. I really appreciate you, and I wish you all the best, and I'll be back at you next Tuesday. Namaste. Are you a mom who wants to feel less stressed and enjoy motherhood more? Do you want to be calmer with your kids and be more present for life? I've gone from being stressed and yelling to become more grounded, more at ease, and have more enjoyable, cooperative relationships with my kids. I'm going to show you how to do it too. If you currently feel stuck or stagnant, this is for you. I've created a free, downloadable audio training, Mindfulness for Moms, the Superpower You Need. It will show you how to respond rather than react, how to let go of stress and feel more grounded in seconds, how to have a smoother day today and become more present for your kids. To get this absolutely free, simply visit the website mindfulmomguide.com. That's mindfulmomguide.com. Get started with mindfulness, the superpower moms need. I'll see you there.